Well, we obviously have many who are serving, have served in the military, and are part of this audience, are Kansas City area residents, obviously, with all the military bases that are in our region. And yesterday, during his first day back in office, Donald Trump made this announcement during his inauguration speech.
Service members who were unjustly expelled from our military for objecting to the COVID vaccine mandate with full back pay. And I will sign an order to stop our warriors from being subjected to radical political theories and social experiments.
That was Donald Trump yesterday. Now, this is something, and I remember us talking about this during COVID, 2021 in particular, that there were thousands of military members who got shown the door because they refused the COVID shot. And if that is you or somebody you know, or even if it's not, if you are somebody with a military background, I want to hear from you on whether or not you think this is going to move the needle, if people are going to want to go back. 913-408-7957. Now, I'm not here to relitigate COVID. I'm not here to relitigate the shot. The question is, does this make sense moving forward for the American military? And it absolutely does, because you've got a military right now that is understaffed. I was looking at the numbers last night, and the Army, Navy, and Air Force all fell well short of their recruiting goals in 2023. And you have a complex set of challenges that the military is facing. In many ways, it's the same challenges that you're seeing with the Kansas City Police Department, right? You have a smaller eligible population. The percentage of young people who are physically, mentally, and morally qualified to serve is low. You have fewer family members who served. Young people are less likely to serve if they don't have a family member who served, right? Because being a cop or being in the military was kind of like the family business. Dad's a police officer, son becomes a cop. Same thing in many respects with the military. So if fewer and fewer people do it with each passing generation, that pool gets smaller. You have a Gen Z that has low trust in institutions and has increasingly followed, and each generation is like this, kind of less traditional life paths. You have moral and behavioral issues. Many young people are turning to, especially in the wake of COVID. They didn't finish up school. They turned to drugs, gangs, criminal records. They can't possibly serve, even if they're able-bodied. And then, of course, you also have a situation where the obesity rate continues to increase. So it's harder than ever. And that doesn't even factor in the politics where you've got, like, you know, the military having to go through gender ideology training and all this other nonsense that's been reported out there where they say, you know what, screw that. I don't want to be a part of it. The active duty Army right now is the smallest it's been since 1940. The Navy has ships that are often 15% undermanned. And the National Guard and reserves have been shrinking since 2020. These are not good trends. They're not good trends, and they're trends that Donald Trump is trying to nip in the bud. So he announced this yesterday, and the overall attitude I saw from many was a positive one. I was reading this on the Military Times website. That just minutes after returning to office, Donald Trump vowed to reinstate more than 8,000 troops dismissed from military service for refusing to take the COVID-19 shot, promising them back pay that could cost the federal government hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, I'll tell you how you make sure that that is a revenue neutral situation. You defund PBS and NPR. You take that money. They get about $500 million a year, and you give it to the folks in the military or who are in the military who want their back pay. That's what you do. If they want to, and if they're willing to rejoin the military, they can get their back pay, and they should get their back pay because we need them right now. Let's go to Kobe in Bates City. Kobe, you're on KCMO. Good morning.
Good morning, Pete. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good.
So what's your story?
I was listening, and so I didn't necessarily get kicked out. I put in a religious exemption just because that was the safest bet for me. I was, at the time that we were forced to get the vaccine, I had maybe 9 months left, and I didn't. And they were threatening us with a dishonorable or less than honorable discharge, and I was about to transition into a regular career, and I did not want to have that on my resume, right? Kind of held it over your head. And so I took the safe bet, and I put in a religious exemption, said that I didn't want to have a vaccine that had aborted fetuses in it, because when they tested it. And so I wrote them a letter, and they sent it to the Surgeon General. And I knew it was the government, so I knew I wasn't going to hear back for a while, and that would get me past my threshold. Well, then they said, well, you're good since you have an exemption in. So they took me off of a flag. And when they flag you, you can't promote or do anything. You basically just stuck where you're at. You can get out, but you can't re-enlist, and you can't really do anything other than just stay where you're at. And so they flagged me, and I wasn't able to promote. I was ready to promote to an NCO position, but I wasn't able to because of my flag. So then I was waiting, and I went to the National Guard, and he was like, he offered me a bonus, said that he could get rid of the flag, and I was like, okay, well then I'll just transition out that way. Well, then I moved to the National Guard, and it followed me. He removed the flag, but then somehow it got put back on me again. And during this whole time, the government screams about equal opportunity, but it's only equal if they believe that it's equal. So if you don't follow their rules, then it's not equal for you. It's only equal for everybody else.
So are you in the National Guard right now?
No, I got out. I was done with that. I finished, and I was like, you know what? Like, I'm done. The whole time that I was in the National Guard, I couldn't promote either because of the vaccine. So, I mean, it took me 3.5 years of having a flag on for not getting the vaccine that I never promoted.
Wow.
At that point, I didn't really care.
Yeah. Yeah. Kobe, thank you for sharing that.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it. That's, that's one example right there of a way he kind of got around it, but he still got hurt, right? He still got impacted out of it. 913-408-7957. Leavenworth, Rick, go ahead. You're on KCMO.
Yes. Hey, I think what President Trump did was the right thing to do, and I applaud him for that. I think some of those people may come back in if they're young enough and they still want to. I don't know if that'll affect it, but I think the biggest thing that will affect recruitment will be this change of the guard. President Trump coming in, if they can get Heltzag into the Secretary of Defense, I really believe this will be it's kind of like when I came in the Army, and it was under Reagan. When Reagan came in, everything changed. The Army was rebuilt, and I think we'll have the same thing now. And I think it'll be reinvigorated. I think that's the biggest recruitment positive going on.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that is going to be more appealing. I mean, who do you want to be your commander-in-chief? I mean, Trump or Pops? Come on, man. It's not even close.
Exactly. So, and I think we get rid of DEI, we go back to war fighting and the focus of war fighting. I spent 25 years in the Army and then another 15 as in the Department of Defense as a civilian, and I worked at a place that looked at the Army and the issues that the Army had, and there are a lot of issues. There are readiness issues. There are issues with promotions because, again, it's not on merit. There is a quota system, and that's not right.
Yeah,
so I think all that's going to go away.
Well said, Rick. Thanks for the service, my man. I appreciate that, and I know this audience does as well. I agree with him. If some people want to come back after basically being out of it for 3 years and get their back pay, welcome them back with open arms. If they're physically able to do the job after all these years out of it. That's fantastic. But I think new recruitment is where Rick is right. You will get hopefully a groundswell of young people, young men obviously, who are going to be very enthusiastic about working for this commander-in-chief, Pete Hegseth, and some of the changes they are making at the Pentagon.